Hi there, Jeff here from the Wetsuit Centre, talking to you today about the O'Neill Blueprint Wetsuit. So the O'Neill Blueprint Wetsuit is a bit of a limited edition wetsuit, or a limited wetsuit, which has been introduced into winter 2020-2021. Essentially, O'Neill have their core range of wetsuits, which they introduce every year. And what they like to do every year is basically have one wetsuit just to spice up the range. And this year it's the O'Neill Blueprint. Okay, the idea being it gives them a bit of independence to create a unique suit every year, which showcases their technology. And this year is the Blueprint, and the Blueprint specifically being targeted at people that are more environmentally conscious. And so, without being obviously a completely eco-friendly wetsuit, because unfortunately most wetsuits aren't fantastic for the environment. This wetsuit does what it can to be better, basically, to be less harmful. And there's lots of technologies which we'll walk you through, which O'Neill use in the Blueprint wetsuit to make it a little bit more friendly than the run-of-the-mill standard sort of 5443 wetsuit. So the Blueprint, in terms of the thickness, is available. In the winter in the UK, it's particularly cold, so we're looking at 5'4" in terms of thickness. That's 5mm on the lower body, 4mm on the upper body, and then 4'3". But I'm sure this wetsuit will be available in the sort of 3'2s for the warmer waters as well. When I say the thicknesses, with this particular suit, it's quite unique. It's a 5'4 plus and a 4'3 plus. Where the plus comes into play, that actually means that it's an extra ½ mil of neoprene, okay? So rather than being 5'4", it's actually 5.45, 4.5 is the true thickness. And why they do that is because they're so confident in the flexibility of the Technobutter, or the TBX3 neoprene, that they're happy to add a little bit more thickness to give you extra warmth, but they're happy that it won't affect the performance or the flexibility of the suit. This wetsuit does cross over with some of the technology available in the other suits, but it's just basically a bit of a different spin and more of a focus on providing more environmentally friendly wetsuit, okay? So if I take you through some of the features on the outside of the suit before we go into that, just the standard stuff, then you've got, this particular suit is a 5'4", so it's a 5'4 plus. So it's actually 4.5 mil of neoprene on the upper body, where you need more flexibility. And they use the TBX3 neoprene on that top part of the suit. And then the lower part of the suit, where you see one nice big panel, basically is the 5.5, where you need to keep your core nice and warm, okay? The seams are all glued and blind stitched, as you would expect. And then they are taped on the insides, if I get a bit closer there as well. So there's a flat heat laminated taping there, basically. That's a really nice, comfortable method of sealing the wetsuit on the inside, giving it a long shelf life. Lower down, you've got the standard things like the Duraflex knee pads on the wetsuit, which just basically create a nice, rigid or robust knee pad, so when you're popping up or using your knee in any way, it's not going to affect or damage the wetsuit. You've got the fuse entry system, which is the chest entry system with this wetsuit, but essentially, it's just an up and over the head system, zips across the front. Everything about this wetsuit is thought through. Okay, so if I come a bit closer, the zip itself is basically a code red zip, which is a really good waterproof zip, which will not corrode with salt over time. It zips from in to out, so you don't have to clip it in and fiddle around. And then when you do clip it back on, you have a little toggle there, basically, which will allow you to clip it down. Okay, and then a pull cord which will tighten the seal there. But essentially the chest zip goes over the top. There's two pieces of neoprene which meet together here and allow you to open the neck nice and wide, turn it in nice and out down to the waist and slip it on easy and take it off easy as well. This is just means that the actual chest zip system is kind of sewn over the top of the wetsuit, and any water that comes into the suit goes into the chest zip system, and then you do have drain holes on the back of the suit, and then there'll be one probably further down here on the arm as well, just to let any water out of the chest entry system. The neck itself is a double lined roll neck collar, and basically it's smooth on the inside. There's two pieces of neoprene here. What happens is that smooth skin neoprene will stick to your neck and allow the outside piece to move independently, so the wetsuit doesn't rub up and down your neck, okay, so it stops any chafing or rub. and it also creates a better seal around the neck. And that's what chest zips are good for. That good tight seal around the neck to stop any flush throughs, and also you don't have a zip down the back, which promotes more flexibility. Okay, so now we turn our attention to some of the more technology that's more unique to this wetsuit. The first thing that's worth mentioning is the TBX neoprene. Okay, now this neoprene itself, the first sort of environmentally friendly point, is actually made with some recycled oyster shells as well within the actual neoprene itself. The jersey, which is made using recycled bottles. But essentially, the neoprene itself is infused with lots of air cells. Okay, and more than your standard neoprene, which means that it's great, obviously flexibility, because there's loads of air within the rubber itself, but it's also very good at sort of catching warm air as it leaves your body in those bubbles and then insulating you as well. Okay. You can see this sort of like textured, almost fluffy sort of material, and that's on the inside and on the outside as well. Okay, now what they've actually done with this jersey, when they sort of created traditional neoprene, they line it with the standard lycra jersey, which is quite heavy and it is quite absorbent naturally. So what O'Neill have done is they've stretched this out and they've reduced the amount of cotton massively within that jersey, which gives it the freedom to stretch and move, makes it lighter, also makes it dry quicker. Okay, and one thing they've done as well is we've stretched this out. They actually, during the process, they actually stretch this material out, and someone goes around and cracks it and breaks it to give it more flexibility. It's incredibly soft, and it does stretch more, and that's down to the air within the neoprene itself, but also probably mainly down to the techniques in producing the jersey on the actual outside of the neoprene, which protects it. Okay, really nice finishing on the suit as well. You've got things like the pinched cuff, which just stops any sort of wear and tear around the cuffs. It just feels really nice as well and creates a better seal around your wrist. On the inside, you've got a little bit of silicone there, or a bit of rubber basically, just to stop the suit flipping out and to stick to your wrist a little bit better. What's different with this suit, on the lower part of the body, there's some more technologies to keep you warmer. So it's probably going to be a warmer wetsuit with the Hyperfreak in the body, but the upper body should feel pretty similar to Hyperfreak, so all that flexibility where you need it. Okay, and one thing you would have noticed as well, I'll come a bit closer again, is you see that honeycomb effect? You might be sort of familiar with this XDS Air technology. It's been around for quite some time, and O'Neill really used it. And initially when it came out, they sort of pioneered it. And basically it's a few different layers of neoprene sandwiched together, and the middle layer has lots of holes, like it's a honeycomb sort of effect basically. And the idea being that as heat leaves your body, those pockets of air will trap that warm air and then use that to insulate you, okay? And it does a really good job of obviously insulating and keeping you warmer around your core. And that's on the front and the back with nice big panels there as well. What we're going to do, turn this wetsuit inside out, and you can have a little look about what's going on the inside. Okay, so here we have the wetsuit turned inside out, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what's going on here. On the upper body, you can see that TBX 3 neoprene, which is dyed in a nice blue colour. One thing that's worth mentioning on that note is that O'Neill do use the dope dye technique, which is a much more environmentally friendly way of getting colour into the fabric of the wetsuit, into the fabric of the jersey. What they used to do is used to have big sort of like vats of the coloured water, I guess, or just to dunk the material in. And allow it to sort of get coloured that way, but obviously they'd have a lot of leftover, pretty much chemical, horrible water, which they have to dispose of. Instead, what they do now is they actually use the fabric is actually run through to dye the individual pieces of fabric through a machine, I guess. And so it's really, really efficient, and there's no wastage left over basically. Okay, so that's worth mentioning. On the lower part of the suit, you can see there's this different fabric, and that brings us on to one of the key specific selling points of this suit. You've got what we call a carbon lining, or a carbon thermal lining on the inside here. Okay, now what that essentially is, carbon obviously is quite good at reflecting heat or retaining heat inside the suit, so they use that as a thermal layering. It's quite fluffy to the touch, and the texture of it will naturally trap warm air as it leaves your body as well, and use that warm air to insulate you and keep you in the water for longer. And you can imagine that combined with the air insulation that you have on these panels specifically of the wetsuit as well, you've got a lot of thermal insulation on the lower body of the wetsuit. One thing that's worth mentioning as well, the actual carbon material, the thermal material, is partially made using recycled tyres as well, which is kind of cool, and goes hand in hand with the more sort of environmentally friendly ethos of the wetsuit. You can actually see that's pretty much the whole way through the core of the wetsuit, or the more important part to keep warm. And then you can actually see that taping as well, that blue flat taping. Now the taping's changed in technology as well. You used to, back in the old days, you used to have glue coming out the side and it'd be quite scratchy and generally not a great seal. They use a machine now which is really, really accurate and comes up to incredibly high temperatures to create amazing sort of bond. So the entire patch of taping is completely watertight and is really much better at creating a watertight seam than it used to be, and it's a lot more comfortable against the skin as well. You haven't got that glue sort of pouring out the side and scratching you. So essentially that's everything going on the inside of the suit. So the blueprint itself then is kind of marketed as a more environmentally friendly wetsuit, but in terms of what the actual suit is geared up towards in terms of like performance or warmth, that kind of thing, I think the idea is they've used the TBX neoprene, which is really synonymous with the Hyperfreak, and that's obviously a performance flexible wetsuit in the upper body. So you've got all of that freedom of movement and everything, but then they've used all of these cool technologies like the air insulation, the thermal lining and that kind of thing, and the smooth skin fabric in the lower part of the body. So it's going to be very, very warm through the torso and through that part of the body. So it's about combining the technologies at their disposal to create a wetsuit which should be incredibly flexible and comfortable, especially in the upper body, but also really, really warm. Okay. One of the biggest things about the suit is that they've used every bit of technology at their disposal to try and create a wetsuit which is less damaging to the environment than some of the other suits in the range, or some of the other suits on the market, especially using things like the limestone neoprene, the recycled tires, recycled bottles, recycled oyster shells, the dope dyeing technique, and the glue as well is actually like a water-based glue as well, so it's much more environment friendly. Again, there's not so much of a sort of residual leftovers which are going to be harmful for the environment, which need to be disposed of. So that's everything going on inside the blueprint, available in a few different thicknesses, but definitely a wetsuit worth considering as either your winter or summer wetsuit for 2021.